We've made it. The last college football game of the playoffs plus regular season. The national championships coming up here on Monday. We're here to give you our preview of Ohio State versus Notre Dame. Both these teams made it through SEC opponents and other opponents to get to the final game. Both playing some of their best football. This is a new SEC podcast. I'm Randall Knapp Jr. We've got Hunter Ziesman here. Hunter, what are your thoughts early on looking at this game?
It's two teams that deserve to be here with this format. They've played the best football in the playoffs, undoubtedly. I think Ohio State really takes the cake for that. And they're coming into this game as big favorites, and I think for a good reason. Now, looking at the betting line and the bets that have come in, it looks like a lot of money is coming in on Notre Dame to either cover or win the game outright. The line's shifted a little bit. So a lot of hope for Notre Dame is kind of building. But for me personally, just a jump out there take. I think Ohio State looks too good right now.
Yeah, hey, you're jumping out there, and I have my thoughts on this game. And so we're going to talk more about who do we think is going to win this game, and can Ohio State live up to that line of 8.5? For Notre Dame, they've won 13 straight to get to this point. Ohio State may have the most impressive college football playoff resume this season and of all time, taking down Tennessee, taking down Oregon, taking down Texas with an average win victory margin of 20 points. I mean, they are eating out there. I'd love to go to the game. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. The tickets a couple weeks ago for the Peach Bowl for Texas and Arizona State were at $40. The entry price to get into this game, according to Vivid Seats, is like $1,500. So
yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to make that one locally, but if you're able to go, it's a good one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while for a Notre Dame team to look this good and be in the spot. You know, they made the playoff a couple times, but they haven't been able to even make it through the semifinals since back to the BCS
2012 was I think 2012 was their first or their last CFP appearance. And they've made it 3 times. So, but this is their first time in the championship since 2012.
Yeah, when they played Alabama. Now, this team I think looks really strong. They're playing an Ohio State team who fell the last time they made the national championship. They have some goals here. Both fans, I can't blame them for traveling and running up the cost on this game.
Yeah.
It's exciting games are when the offense is going off, high scoring games. What these two teams are known for isn't that. These two teams are known for the other side of the ball, and it's the defense that both teams have shown all season. I think, right now, they've let up the least amount of points, 1 and 2. Ohio State 1, Notre Dame 2, the least amount of points all season. Ohio State not even in double digits in points given up at home this season. So this game isn't going to be a high scoring, high flying. No. It shouldn't be. It's going to be two defenses playing lights out.
It's going to be two defenses playing lights out. And I think the over-under for the game reflects that, 46.5 for this game. Both these defenses are 1 and 2 in the nation overall when it comes to yards per game. They're also number 1 and number 2 in the nation for passing yards for this game. And I think the main thing to take away from that stat is who is going to play a bigger role in ultimately their team winning this game. And where are you going to see better quarterback play from this game? Will Howard, or is it going to be Riley Leonard? Will Howard coming into this game over 3,000 passing yards or 3,700 passing yards, clearly the better passer. Riley Leonard coming in at 2,600 passing yards. But the dynamic of what he offers from the ground over 800 yards in the season changes things up. What can these two guys do against the number 1 and number 2 passing defense in the country?
Yeah, and it's going to be a tough thing for them to do alone, which is why they're going to have to lean on the running backs a lot more. But I think the opportunities are going to present itself more to Riley Leonard to pass the ball. Because, I think when looking at matchups across the field, I think Ohio State really takes the lead in majority of the units. Like they're just a little bit better. I think they have one of the best rosters in college football this year, probably one of the best rosters over the past, 5-6 years, probably back to another Ohio State team. But I do think that where there's a matchup opportunity for Notre Dame is with the wide receivers to the DBs that don't have safety help on Ohio State.
Yeah.
Jaden Greathouse has played great in the playoffs. He kind of had that big coming out party last game. There's opportunities for Riley Leonard to pass if he can sit in the pocket and throw. Something that Ohio State does pretty well is getting pressure on quarterbacks. And back to the matchups, I think Ohio State's pass rush matches up too well with Notre Dame's O-line. So that's going to be a big piece.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be like the main piece of the game is this Ohio State defense versus the Notre Dame passing offense. You talked about Jaden Greathouse having that coming out party game. The thing is for Notre Dame, their leading receiver on the season is Jaden Greathouse. He's had over 450 yards in the season. His fifth best receiver is Jeremiah Love, right? His running back. And so there hasn't been a ton of weapons that Riley Leonard has proven to this point that he can disperse the ball to. They haven't had to though, right? They've had Jadarian Prince and they've had of course Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard's own rushing abilities, but the passing opportunity is going to be there. Do they have the guys to find in space to make things happen?
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's down to just throwing the ball, it's going to be tough. It's the balance of the two. Running the ball, you mentioned Jeremiah Love in the pass game. In the run game, if he doesn't get going, I think the game's a wrap. It's a huge piece to be able to run the ball. Texas couldn't do it. And you just saw how tough it was for Texas to continue to move the ball when they couldn't establish a run. In this one, Ohio State's rush defense has been solid, especially on outside runs. Notre Dame, Jeremiah Love, a little bit better between the tackles, not bringing as many outside of the tackles for some outside runs. So there is opportunity, punch it up the gut. It's going to be tough, though. They're, again, one of the best run-stopping teams. So it's a balance of everything. How do you play against a defense who can do it all?
Yeah. And talking about Ohio State's passing defense, I feel like I can't not mention JT Tuimoloau, their defensive tackle, 11.5 sacks in the season, 7th in the nation, 2nd in the Big Ten. He's been able to cause a lot of disruption and pressure for guys like a Riley Leonard.
Yeah. And you got to shout out Caleb Downs, too, on both the pass game, pass rush game, in the run defense. Seen him step down to the box a little bit more, have that big play. On the second to last drive for Texas, stopping the questionable play called shooting the gap, to stop that run. So there's people all over the field for Ohio State. There's guys everywhere that you can point to and talk about how critical they are to this team, because there's just, dogs all over the field. And it comes all the way through the middle, the D line, the edges, the linebackers, the safeties. I think the cornerbacks are probably the weakest point, if you even want to call it that.
If you want to call it that, right? And let's flip it on its head, right? When we look at the Notre Dame defense versus this Ohio State offense, we talked about Notre Dame's defense being 2nd in the nation for passing yards per game. Ohio State's offense, the main story has been, what Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith have been able to do in these playoffs, right? Jeremiah Smith's got 4 touchdowns, a pretty quiet game last game, but Emeka Egbuka stepped up, right? And I might be saying his name wrong there, but he stepped up and delivered. So what can this Notre Dame passing defense do against these two top receiving threats? That's a question.
It's a great defense, great corners, great safeties. Looking at how to stop Ohio State's passing offense, I got to look at what Texas did. Even though they lost the game, for the most part, they shut down Ohio State. Jeremiah Smith only 3 yards on the game, 1 catch. What did they do to stop him? And can Notre Dame kind of replicate that? And, you probably saw him, and everyone was posting images. They're like, look at Texas putting 3 guys on Jeremiah Smith. And, maybe to the casual viewer, that's what people see online, but it's the zone coverage that Texas brought to that game and being able to make it tougher on Will Howard to make the right reads. We saw him do it effective across the middle when the zones were transitioning. Notre Dame isn't going to play a lot of zone. But they're going to try to match up one-on-one. And that's a tough thing to do against Ohio State. Jeremiah Smith kind of torches, man coverage and gets behind that quite often.
Yeah, he looks like Randy Moss out there, the way he can get behind some of these defensive backs. And so that's going to be a main matchup for this game. And Notre Dame by no means has had an easy stretch to prove that they have the ability to slow down, top passing offenses. They obviously were able to slow down Indiana. They were able to slow down Georgia. Can they do it against the Ohio State? And then, the other piece of this game is, what can we expect from the rushing attack for Ohio State versus Notre Dame?
Yeah. Ohio State running the ball, it's dual threat, 2 guys. They both have their own, unique style of running the ball. The style of running the ball has changed a little bit in the playoffs. We've seen the O-line injuries. They've adapted a little bit to fit around that. And it's worked. They've gotten the guys involved also in the pass game. It's a lot of weapons. It's a lot of weapons for Ohio State against this Notre Dame team. And, they haven't had an easy path to get here, but comparing the two, for Notre Dame, stopping Penn State and stopping, an Oregon are 2 different type of tasks in my mind, and stopping what Ohio State has done up to this point and stopping much more proficient offenses compared to who Notre Dame, I think, has stopped. It's going to be a tough task to stop both the running backs, all the receivers. Will Howard, when he's playing well, is
Yeah.
a really good quarterback at just managing the game. Notre Dame gets a lot of takeaways. Texas got an interception off of Will Howard, so we'll see if they can do the same thing.
Yeah, I think we're downplaying a little bit what this Notre Dame defense can do when it comes to the passing defense. You talked about a little bit, like in the last game, Drew Allard. I mean, they only completed. I think he only completed 12 passes. Tyler Warren only had 75 yards. There was no receptions made by receivers, but we know Tyler Warren's pretty much a receiver as a tight end. That should give you some confidence. Getting an interception in that game against what's supposed to be a good passing attack in Penn State should give Notre Dame fans some confidence that this defense might have the ability to slow down Ohio State's offense, similar to what Texas did.
It's a good feat. It's they did. You can only play the guy. You can only play the guy in front of you, but the path of these two teams is just night and day. I mean, I think Ohio State probably the hardest path that you could possibly get. If you would have rearranged all the teams for the hardest path, it would have been Ohio State's.
Or the winner of that Oregon-Ohio State game was going to have the hardest path, no doubt. Yeah. Like Oregon, the only difference is that they wouldn't play Tennessee. So
yeah, but to play Tennessee, the way that they played in that game, the way they played against Oregon, and the way they played against Texas, it's much more impressive to me. Notre Dame, great team. It's just right now, I don't know how I can't bet against Ohio State right now in the type of football that they're playing.
Right. Yeah. Like I think I touched on it earlier. Their average win margin right now in the playoff is 20 points. I was browsing the PFF website, and they put an article together every week about the best players by position in PFF grades, and they'll compare it to their opponent. And Ohio State's players unanimously were more featured on that list than Notre Dame's players in terms of their grades and how they look position by position. So most things look to point to Ohio State's side, but there's something about this Notre Dame team. They have that rushing attack. They have a strong defense. They haven't really needed Riley Leonard to be the guy when it comes to passing, but last game he had 223 passing yards. So like he proved he can pass.
Yeah.
Can he do it on this stage? Does he need to? And will he be the guy? We'll see.
Yeah, I think the key for the game for Notre Dame is establishing a consistent run. They've been relying on a little bit of explosiveness. If they can establish a consistent run game, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but you got to stick with it a little bit. You got to help your team out. You got two guys back there. You got the quarterback. Throw something interesting together. If you can't establish that, it's going to be really, really tough because if you're going, tit for tat, nickel dime, like back and forth with this team, you're gonna lose the game over the course of the stretch of the game. We saw Texas do it. You're holding the last 3 drives of the game. 14-point swing. You can't just stick with them and play because of how talented the roster is. Two great defenses. That right now, I'm picking Ohio State.
I know, and that's the problem in this game is like Notre Dame's offense is such a chip away. Their top receivers, most of these guys average about 12 yards per reception. Their running backs are solid, but it's like they kind of have to get warmed up and build and break you down throughout the game. Jadarian Prince, their backup, who's played a little bit more of late, hasn't really done as much in the last 2 playoff games. Riley Leonard had 80 rushing yards in the previous playoff game against Georgia, not as much against Penn State. They need all those guys to be firing early and often, period. It's I don't know if Ohio State's a team that you can let just get up on you and establish momentum and bank on your defense keeping you in the game. And that's a spot where I think a lot of people looking at this game believe Notre Dame's going to be. And then it's like, how long can they sit in that position before Ohio State just puts, the foot on the gas even more? But all that to say, I like Notre Dame in this game. I really believe that there's something going on with this defense and what it's been able to do throughout the season for Notre Dame. I expect it to be in the under perspective. So I'm going 24-21 Notre Dame in this one.
Okay. Yeah, I like it starting off a little bit slower. Both teams finding their footing, and then eventually Ohio State kind of, opening the floodgates. So I like Ohio State here, 34-17. Covering the spread. Now, it's there's some data points that would point to my pick maybe being wrong. Notre Dame's been great against the spread this year, only not covered twice. But this Ohio State team right now, that they're playing the best football that they've played all year, the best of any team this year. So I can't I can't bet against them. We'll see.
It's tough. And this is the Ohio State. I think it's been said before, when the playoff format changes, they seem to do pretty well. So if things point out to that stat, this is Ohio State's game. But Notre Dame seems to be due for one, right? They finally have a coach that people seem to like. It's making the team more likable, apparently. That's what the internet says. But tell us what y'all think. If you're listening to our preview, you've made it to this point. I got Notre Dame. Hunter's got Ohio State. Put in the comments, what you think the score will be, or who you think's going to win in this one. And thank you for tuning in. This is a new SEC podcast.